Thank you. Doug.
Two quickies. The first time I came to Hornby, I came on a private ferry. That was 1968. I think it held 5 cars, is that right?
Two.
Well, there was one went around the corner. Now, next time I came to Hornby was actually 2 years later because we moved. And I've often wondered, when highways took over, that ferry route from the Savoys, what promises were made to the island? There must have been some, and I've never heard a word about that. And did that permit highways to turn it over to ferries? I don't know. Really, I'd really be happy if someone would check that.
It's interesting, BC Ferries, I think, was first operated under the BC Toll and Bridge Authority or something, before BC Ferries was formed. That's my understanding anyway.
Let's not get into this.
Yeah.
This is, the other thing is, it hasn't been said, you all know it, but somebody has to say it, that these free ferries up in the interior are not Mickey Mouse. The 2 ferries in Narrow Lakes are exact sister ships to the 2 that we take here. Just change the front ramp and they could service here. And I heard Kevin Falcon, when he was the minister of that, on your radio saying that they could not charge fares on those ferries because it would cost more to collect the fares than they would gain.
That's funny.
Now, what does that say about ours? 2 questions, that's all. Leave them with you.
Yeah. Carol.
Yes, I want to make one more comment, ask a quick question, if I could. First of all, about the power, when we have a power outage and the ferry down, everybody thinks everything's canceled. So I think that's another reason why, confirming it. Regarding that user pay issue, in the 5 or 6 principles of the Ferry Act, which I understand that is up for review, to me they all seem to revolve around the user pay issue, because otherwise they wouldn't call for complete sustainability of the, I don't know all the terminology, but I am hoping that you would come up with something that's a little more two-sided about between the users and the providers, particularly with regard to, in comparison with other services we get from the province and from other governments and from the federal government. For about 25 years I represented Hornby and then Hornby and Denman and the Islands Trust and local governments and with the regional district in Comox, Strathcona, and had to go over, had the fun every year of going over all the proposed budgets for all the services and looking at the differences between local government services or regional services, or some of our tiny little local services like this community hall and our fire department. And I'm trying to think of any other service beyond little community hall or fire department ones, our local tiny little worker services that require us to pay for everything. And that including hospitals, roads, bridges, transit, airports. We need all those things we don't provide for ourselves. But we use them to various degrees. Some of us don't use them at all. But we're not expected as a community to support the entire infrastructure, fuel costs, staffing and everything. And I fought that battle a lot at the regional district because we paid a lot to things in Comox Valley we never used. For instance, hockey rinks, curling rinks, couldn't use because of the ferries, used less and less as time went on because of the ferry fares. And yet we were required to pay our equal mill rate, as you called it in the old days, toward those services. We were eventually able to get out of some of them, but with a large battle on our part to prove that we didn't use those services, but we had services we needed here. And there was a negotiation process, and we won some and we lost some. And we were accepting of the need to pay for our own fire hall, our own community hall, our own what are other recycling efforts, because we can't expect somebody else to pay if they're not using them. We wouldn't. And I had many battles with the mayor of Courtenay because she said, well, we subsidize your ferries, so you have to subsidize our ferries. And that didn't quite fit right, because we all use the big ferries too. We pay when we go, same as everybody else. So, just follow up on what Tony said a while ago. Over all that time, and the reason I'm not going to meetings much anymore, is I have lost the energy to keep fighting those windmills, the big provincial ones particularly. And as I don't feel have the energy either to keep stomping our tiny little feet to no avail.
You're right.
I have a very important announcement. We just saw hydrocarbon.
Yes, I saw that.
Was it leaving or arriving?
Well, it's coming.
Oh, no way.
All right, don't let him off the island.
Maybe they'll privatize
So,
it.
Richard,
Yeah, I hope, I didn't make any notes, but I have a lot of catch up here. A little bit on the co-op. The co-op didn't have a truck for a long time. They used the Hornby Denman freight transfers. And when BC Ferries took over, they were very clever in keeping their major delivery vehicle under 5,500 kilograms so that it went as a vehicle, not as a commercial vehicle. This poor co-op truck, it's not full all the time. It's got to pay the whole length. It pays 62 cents a foot or whatever it is, almost 2 or 3 times more than the vehicles used to pay that brought the groceries over. So that's why your jug of milk's approaching $7.
$1.89.
The co-op also keeps gasoline at town price. They subsidize it for us, nobody else, because at one point the ferries approached them and said, we have a lot of people bringing drums of gas over that's not legal and dangerous. Can you please do something on your end and maybe there'd be some benefit down the road? Well, that happened for a while, and the gasoline does have a special trip every week, and the propane, and it is locally subsidized to prevent the smuggling that goes back and forth. As far as the ferries being responsive, they've come up with successive rules from accidents elsewhere. There was now a 5-minute cutoff on getting onto the ferry on the last one that comes to Hornby. Not the last Denman ferry, but the last connection. And we've managed to miss this one twice, just on a personal basis, once coming from St. Paul's Hospital on a medical pass. And we got on to the 3 o'clock ferry at Horseshoe Bay, which is now permanently the 3:10. And because of that displacement of 10 minutes, you now arrive at Buckley Bay right on top of the last sailing at 6 o'clock. So not only did we get caught twice since May on this, but my wife, who's one of the few people that actually work off the island and have to come back late, has been caught 3 times now, being there before 6 and being left overnight at the terminal and being turned back. It seems to me simple enough that when I complained in June, and I went to both senior captains on both routes, one of which had 4 months of service and the other was a newcomer as well. They referred me to the complaint department. I registered a complaint in June. I was promised a copy faxed or emailed back to me. Hasn't happened yet. And I could not understand for the life of me why, if they alter the ferry schedule permanently at Horseshoe Bay, there can't be a 10-minute accommodation at this end. And it wasn't just us, it was one of our company. It was a performer at the festival this summer. BC Ferries purports to be a major sponsor of the Hornby Festival. If they really wanted to be, they would give everybody that's got a festival ticket at Buckley Bay a ride over here. They don't make an extra effort. We don't flog t-shirts and we don't have white spot to do. And when we do have a little privateer trying to sell ice cream, they make sure he's not 1 foot on the property, or they're going to call the police to have her removed. The alternate service provider, I don't know how big a joke that can be. Every time a boat was operated here, the Coloki, the Kalit, the Clattawa, the next thing we know, it's up at Albion going back and forth for free, running for nothing. And when they shut that service down and put the Golden Ears Bridge up, even a month before they took those ferries out of service, they had them on Craigslist for $1 million each. Now, we could have had those boats just parked here, and there's enough of us retired guys that we could have run our own service with the residuals. So is there a chance for alternate service providers? Not in hell, not a chance in hell, because it goes to Craigslist before it goes to the stakeholders or the people that actually owned, refitted, maintained, painted those vessels. We painted those vessels here to avoid the cost of the shipyards. And yet, when Wacky Bennett, Pete's got the book there, when he got the original $8 million federal subsidy, it was only to apply to the link between Vancouver Island and BC as part of the North American Act, the part of the act that brought BC into Confederation in 1871. That figure now is somewhere between $120 and $140 million a year, and we've been absorbed by that system. We're not highways, we're part of that link between Vancouver Island and the mainland that should share some of that subsidy. Now, do we raise revenues? Well, yeah, we did. About 10 or 12 years ago, I was involved, and Pete was involved, in organizing a movie for a major Hollywood studio, Paramount. And the chartering of our vessel and the use of our crews cost the movie company $2.2 million. Did we get 1 red cent of that in our coffers as benefit to this route? Did we get any of that credit? No, it all got dumped into Central General Treasury and dissipated. If you have a doctor here and you need critical care or you need to be in and out of the hospital, no doctor here has hospital privileges. You must have a doctor off the island. We can't access specialists or doctors off the island when we can't even guarantee that we're going to get on a boat, even if it's not weathered in, because of the lineup at Denman and the fact that I'd be really happy to see Denman get a cable ferry. I think it's a ridiculous idea. As a seaman, there's tankers go up there to service, up Bain Sound to service the airport. The airport is strategic. They're not going to stop sending tankers up there. There's not going to be any coal ships go up there to Union Bay like there used to be. There will, if they're going to go somewhere, it's going to be the Alberni Inlet. So the fact that at Denman they raised the gill netters and the fisheries as being the major concern and the major instigator, I would hazard a guess that the military would be deeply upset to have cables strung across Bain Sound because strategically they need that air fuel for fighters have only been detached to Cold Lake, Alberta. They're only 45 minutes away. They would be reassigned there in a blink. So strategically, a cable ferry doesn't make any sense. But I say give them their cable ferry so that we can have a medium-sized ferry, fast ferry that'll do a trip from here to there in an hour and skip Denman Island totally. And if people agree with me, then if they have only heard this for the first time, then I'll tell you that there's also been free ferries on this coast in the saltwater system. When you bought a ticket leaving Westview, or if you were coming from Comox and you went over to Powell River, you got an extra ticket, free ticket, to go to Texade Island. And I believe years ago when they initiated the trip to Hornby from Buckley Bay, that it was a courtesy pass in the beginning as well, because the idea was it was to be 3-point service. And the same way that Comox to Blubber Bay to Westview was going to be 3-point service that never developed. It took BC Ferries in 1986 to say, oh, well, we can't have free trips. When you get on a boat years ago, the North Island Princess, the one that's coming apart, was quartered and made into a larger boat. It used to run out of Kelsey Bay. And when you got to Beaver Cove, there was another, that was BC Ferries, there was another ferry, you got on at Port McNeill, you could go to Sontoula or Alert Bay or both, same price. So it's not true that there weren't free service. You get on at Chemainus, you got two places you can go for the same price. You know, you get onto Salt Spring in any one of three ways. You can go off on a ferry that you haven't paid a nickel to, or maybe you never pay when you through that ticket booth when you go off, and that's Vesuvius and Long Harbor and Fulford. So there's three terminals that'll let you off. You don't have to pay anything extra, and the same when you're at Seashell. You can go off either end and there's no additional charge.
Just quickly, there probably isn't anywhere to eat right now. We'll probably be closed with the power. So just thinking if they want to have lunch, they probably should come to one park, which means to leave now. Just about. Just about, yeah.
You get in your car and drive.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Do not stop.
Do not stop?
It's a 9-minute drive from here.
Thank you very much. Sorry to cut you off, Richard. I just didn't realize if
Yeah, if I could just make one more point, I want to thank these gentlemen for coming for the first, it's the first time in 10 years, but keep in mind that because you are commissioned by the same group that's paying for the ferries, that you're on our tab as well.
Okay.
So, appreciate you being here and listening.